pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Ms. Ackermite, roll call, please.
Mr. Stahl?
Here.
Mrs. Reed? Here. Mrs. Mitchell? Here. Mr. Myers?
Here.
Mr. Trombley?
Here.
Dr. Crouch? Here. Mr. Birchfield?
Here. Okay, do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented? Moved by Mr. Trombley, supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? Passes 7-0. Dr. Gray, Shining Stars.
We start tonight with a Maltby Intermediate teacher, Corinne Shorts, a music teacher who was nominated to receive a Shining Star. I think, Mr. Birchfield, you have a couple of comments?
Yeah, I want to recognize, I nominated Ms. Shorts for her incredible display of putting together a performance, choir performance for the 5th grade at Maltby. And we attended a couple of weeks ago at the end of the year, and it was just absolutely unbelievable, the amount of coordination and the level of detail that she's put into that. Certainly the kids demonstrated unbelievable talent, but I thought it was worth recognizing her for her efforts in putting that together, because it was nothing short of amazing. When you're talking about, I don't know, probably 100 or so 5th graders that had to be choreographed, coordinated, and they all were on cue. So it was very, very well done. So,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Yep, we also have, we were supposed to have First Robotics team here tonight. They couldn't make it. They're kind of on the victory lap. They just left the Senate, I think last week, and a couple other pieces. So assembling them again tonight was proved to be too much, so we're going to do it at another meeting here down the road. But our other team that I do see here tonight, and I'll have Ms. Peters and her dad come up. He's going to jump up as well. But Ashton Peters, former Brighton Bulldog, former state champion lacrosse at Brighton Bulldog, and just an unbelievable student, and now an unbelievable teacher and coach for us. So she's going to introduce our girls lacrosse team, who once again had an unbelievable season. We'll get Rockford before it's over, but it was a great season, and I can't wait to hear about it.
Can you hear me? Is this on?
It is.
Okay. Well, first, thank you again for inviting us. This group of girls is unbelievable. And at the beginning of the season, we had the plan to make a new legacy for our program, and I truly believe that this group of girls right here did that. We created a new legacy in our community and now in the state. This is our 2nd year in a row making it to states. We will get Rockford, like you said. We will get them. It's going to take some time and it's going to take some work, but this group of girls and our seniors have led the way for the work that we have to put in to beat Rockford and to win the state championship. And so I'm super proud of you guys. You all know that. We had an incredible season. Everybody kind of underestimated us because we had 11 seniors graduate last year, especially Heartland. They underestimated us. And we had an awesome win against them to go on to states. We won, was it 11-9? We beat them by 2 points. And some of the best memories we had were made in that game together. And then we went on to states where Rockford did beat us, but that's okay because this is the 2nd time we made it back to states in 2 years, and that's awesome. Not a lot of teams have done that. So I'm super proud of you girls. You can come on up here. I'm gonna announce your names. So come stand up here. And when I say your name, you can go across and shake everybody's hands.
So when she says your name, then you start getting the ones right.
You're gonna go down and shake everyone's hands and say thank you.
Ashley, why don't you read all the names, and then we'll shake them all.
We'll just go all at once. Okay. So,
In any order.
not everybody is here tonight because it's summer and they're enjoying the break. But we had freshman Ella Booth, senior McKenna Wilchinen, senior Audrey Cho. Wait till the end.
I'm sorry, I told her to go.
Sophomore Kirsten Brown, freshman Amanda Grenadier, freshman Gabby Mainhart, junior India Lang, junior Paige Falk, freshman Abby Birchfield, senior Kate Boyajian, junior Emily Bahu, sophomore Olivia Gross, junior, you're junior, Valerie Minnick, senior Madeline Minnick, junior Megan Soup, sophomore Delaney Conkle, sophomore Sophie Mondro, junior Kat Kopshia, sophomore Shannon Myers, senior Maddie Mintz, senior Riley Brown, junior Alyssa Yegi, and sophomore Liz Kelly, senior Jenna Majadansky, sophomore Alex Wallace, wait, you're not a sophomore, junior Lexi. I talked to a different Alex Wallace today, that's what just happened.
And it does say Alexander.
10, sophomore Kennedy Stilson, and junior Jackie Schulte. And what I really am excited to point out is we had a ton of freshmen and sophomore in that roster. So we have a bright future ahead of us. Great season, girls. I am beyond proud of you, and thank you again for having our team here tonight. We really appreciate this honor.
Well, you guys are certainly welcome to stay if you wish. You should also be part of that. This brings us to our call to the public this evening. If you wish to address the board, please step to the podium, state your name, address, and we ask that you limit comments to 3 minutes.
Can you guys hear me? Before I say my name and my call to the public starts, I just want to say I have bets for the youth lacrosse coach that in 2 years is when they're going to take over Rockford, and we made that bet 5 years ago. And I'm telling you that in 2 years, those girls are going to win states. They're going to take over Rockford. Okay, that's all.
Right.
Brian Racer and I have that bet. I'm going to say it's going to happen. Mindy Bashaw, 8785 Strovis Court. I was one of the parents that stood up at the meeting last two meetings ago and said that we were definitely pulling our children out of the district, or out of Hawkins and possibly out of the district. And I know a lot of things have happened since then, and we're definitely not going to pull out of the district now. And I just wanted to come here today to talk to you about some of the concerns I have going forward about whether or not we stay at Hawkins. A couple of the concerns I have as a mom is, number one, that we have a lot of very young staff at the building now because a lot of our veteran staff have left. My second concern is that we have a new administrator coming in who's going to need to be an incredibly special person, and I know that's going to be a really tough hunt, but it's going to really require somebody very special to rebuild that school. Third, we have a new school secretary, and after having 5 kids go through that school, I can tell you Joanna was an incredibly special person, and she was the heartbeat of that school, so it's going to take another very special person to replace her as well. And that's one of my concerns as a parent. Another problem that I have mulled over in my head multiple times is whether or not we keep the Hawkins as a special needs hub for our district. I'm concerned about what that's done to our staff and how that has spread them incredibly thin. And it's created a climate of gen ed versus special needs. And it should never be like that in any school. My hope would be that all parents would advocate for all kids. And I feel, after I spoke at the last meeting, I got hate mail, hate calls. I am an awful mom. I hate special needs kids. And let me just tell you, there's nothing farther from the truth. I was here as an advocate for every single kid and wanting to make sure that every single kid, whether they were gen ed or special ed, no matter what, had the opportunity to have the best education they could have. And there's definitely a us versus them kind of a climate there right now. My hope is that we can either find a really fast way to dissipate that, or we can possibly look at spreading that program out throughout all the elementary schools. And I just want to say that I appreciate that Brighton is always on the cutting edge of things and trying new things, specifically the putting all special needs in a hub. No other school district has done that. You guys have done so many things that have been cutting edge that are amazing. Sometimes when they don't work though, we need to fix it. So I'm hoping and counting on that. We haven't made our decision on whether or not now we're going to stay at Hawkins or we're going to move, and it's going to depend on where you guys end up. But I just wanted you to know what my concerns were going forward as a parent, potentially at Hawkins in the fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board this evening? Okay, that'll close call to the public and move us to the superintendent report. Dr. Gray.
Nothing this week at the end of June, so good.
That'll close the superintendent report. All right, moving us into for action. Item A, regular meeting minutes of June 10th, 2019. Do we have a motion to approve? Support. Moved by Ms. Krebs, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? One abstention, so 6-0-1. Right. Item B, Neola policies, revises bylaw volume 33, number 2, February 2019. Dr. Gray.
This has been through our policy committee. This is a recommendation from that committee. This is our volume 33, number 2. This will actually get us right up to speed where we need to be in terms of our policies. So I see the policy committee smiling, which is a good thing, because that's a more workload committee, but I appreciate their help, and we recommend these for approval.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Support.
Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion?
Thanks for your work.
Thank you. I think we have a good system now. Yeah.
Thanks. Good.
And we're taking the next 2 months off.
See you in August. Well, if that's the case, I think we need to discuss a few things. No? All right, I'll be quiet. All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? Okay, that passes 7-0. Item C, school lunch price increases, student nutrition department. Dr. Gray.
We're constantly looking at school nutrition lunch prices, taking kind of a test of the market, doing comparative market analysis. We're in the middle of the pack in relation to this, and it's that time that we incrementally raise it by about 25 cents. So we're recommending that you raise lunch prices by 25 cents.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve? Support. Moved by Mr. Trombley, supported by Mr. Myers. Any discussion?
I wanted to ask a couple of questions. I know we talked last time about how we have to make sure that we stay in a certain range compared to our costs in order to preserve the federal funding that we get for the school lunch program. I did notice though, going through the budget, that we seem to be running very close to the line on the food service program. Is that what we should be doing, or should we be worried about that?
So the reason that is because we can take some money from the food service fund and transfer it into the general fund as like an indirect cost almost. And for the longest time, we needed that money in the general fund to, essentially make ends meet. But now that the general fund is in good shape financially, we may want to consider leaving some fund balance in the food service fund. So it appears as if, we're running tight in the food service fund, but really we're transferring
I think last year, $100,000 to general fund. The problem is if the fund balance grows too big in the food service fund, you may not be able to get it back because there's, like, get it smaller, because there's certain requirements about how much money you can transfer to the general fund. But for now, I would support having the food service account grow their fund balance.
Remember, that's on top of as well, we're purchasing new equipment every year out of that. We're purchasing box trucks, we're purchasing serving lines, and those come with a pretty hefty price tag, so.
Well, and not only that, but I think, as I understand it, one of the main drivers of the increase is because the federal regulations, we
Right.
have to maintain proportionality with what we're charging in order to meet the federal guidelines. We're not, this, in other words, this isn't being proposed to build the fund balance in food
No, that's
services.
exactly right.
This
That's
is
right.
really driven by
Yes.
federal mandate.
Yeah, they want to make sure that you're not charging the parents who do pay for lunch the right amount and living off of the federally funded students, if that makes sense.
Right,
So
so
there's requirements that we have to
Exactly.
follow.
So we're not using the federal money to subsidize
That's
those
right.
that don't otherwise qualify,
right.
so we have to
That's
maintain
right.
that, right?
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Bless you. Item D, amended budget 2018-19. Dr. Gray.
Dr. Gistinger is going to take the amended and projected.
Okay.
Yep,
You want to lump both of those together?
We can if you'd like.
Yeah. Go for it.
So we met, the finance committee met, and as a result of that, we have some recommendations from members of the finance committee, these extra pages for your board packet that are they're cosmetic changes that we noticed as we were going through the budget. And also Trustee Reed had sent me an email today with some questions, and so I made they don't really substantially change the numbers at all. They're just making sure the money lines up in the right columns, that we have the right fund balance in the food service account, which was an issue, and that the various columns match up appropriately. So again, small cosmetic changes, but I wanted the board records to reflect that we made those changes and that they were in the board packet. So these 3 pages are what I'm suggesting we switch out for your board packet for the projected, or for the amended budget. But essentially, no changes at all. We've had a couple weeks to look at this and really haven't received any questions on either.
I'd say the other positive to the amended budget is fully funding pretty much every program in the district and putting $1.1 million into that piece. So we're growing it at a slow but steady rate, chasing that 10%, and fiscally we're pretty strong.
Yeah, hold up, let's get did you want to add anything else on the projected, or that was it? Okay, so let's do a motion for item D in the amended budget 2018-19 and then projected budget 2019-20.
So move.
Wait, okay.
No?
I mean, we can do the motion, but I had a couple of questions. That's
No, we'll go. Okay, we got a motion from Mr. Myers. Do we have support? Supported by Mr. Trombley. Okay, discussion.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had the numbers right on the food service resolution.
Yes.
So what you changed was,
So let's take a look at your packet, which would have been the old page 79. So the food service resolution ties to the page in your board packet of page 91. So when you had emailed me today, we were going back and forth about that fund balance, and that's what resulted in the change of the 17-18 actual. So the column that says on page 91, the 17-18 actual, we ended the year with $10,332 of fund balance, but we transferred that to the general fund essentially to wipe out the fund balance. And we projected we were gonna have $504 when we did the 18-19 budget, but again, that was an estimate. But by the time we get around to the actual, we should know what the fund balance is. And so I reflected that $0 amount,
Okay,
because as we follow the columns down, the numbers were, they were tracking.
right.
And so that $4,822 is what we think we're going to leave the food service balance in the fund balance. The old resolution showed $5,326 because of that $504 that was sitting in the fund balance that should have been $0.
Okay.
I have a question. Just throughout it, the other financing sources, what encompasses that in general?
It depends on the fund, so which one in particular are
Well,
you?
I queued in under support services and the community services.
What page are you looking at?
I'm looking at page 77. It's 4XX, 6XX, other financing
Okay,
uses.
so this is the general fund.
Right.
And so that, the majority of that money is the PA-18 money that is transferred from LESA to the district.
Any other discussion, questions?
We did have two things on the proposed budget rather than the final amended.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you have anything in the final minute or we go? No. Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
There it is. I know so the new accounting standards changed a couple of things.
Yes.
And how we tracked the money, for some of our activities. And I wanted to make sure that we just looked at the, numbers for the athletics department for this year, because it would appear that there's a big jump, but
Sure.
you mentioned to me that that is just because of the change in the accounting.
That's
Can
right.
you describe that a little bit more?
So, GASB 84 is not allowing us to have any fiduciary or trusted agency or student activity accounts. So we always call those the 6-2 accounts. You may have noticed them in the check register. So they're getting split up in, well, actually 3 ways. The ones that have general fund accounts already or that have an educational focus will be moved to the general fund. Those that are more entrepreneurial, that are kind of a for-profit or have like a special revenue, will end up in a new account that we've created. They refer to it as a 2-9 account at the state, but it's a special revenue fund, just like the food service fund and just like the community education fund. There's going to be a handful of accounts that are going to remain as a 6-2 account or a trust and agency, but those are the accounts that have no district oversight. There's no district employee that manages or directs the expenditures of those funds. And most of them, I think we're going to have 9, 7 of them are therapy dog accounts. So because of that, we had to lift all that activity off of those internal accounts and drop them in either the general fund or the special revenue fund. And so that's why you see what appears to be a big increase in athletics, but that's because there's a tremendous amount of activity in athletics in those trust and agency accounts. And so not only that, you will also see what we think will probably be offsetting revenue, because a lot of that is fundraised dollars that will now end up in the general fund. And if you look at page 116 in your board packet, that is the new student activity account, or what the state refers to as the 2-9 account. So the revenue of $1,051,000 is essentially an estimate of what we think is going to be run through these new accounts. And then the student activity expenditures of $806,000. That's an estimate of what we think the expenditures are going to be, which leaves about $244,000 left over. The $244,000 belongs to everybody. All the funds all the activities are rolled into the special revenue fund. But the majority of that is the play and the musical at the high school, because they have 2 years worth of revenue sitting in their revenue account and only 1 year worth of expenditures, but they need that seed money to start, creating scenes and getting the expenditures going for the new musical.
So for the athletics, what used to be the trust and agency accounts for, I don't know, are those the booster organizations or other fundraising by the teams?
We don't really have an athletic booster account.
Okay. But is that, those trust and agency accounts went into the general
Into
fund
the
tied
general
to
fund.
athletics as opposed to the student activities fund.
That's right. And the athletic accounts, we already have a whole set of athletic accounts in the general fund. So we just added to those.
Ben, what was the reason you want to be able to see this?
Well, I thought that originally the reason was because they wanted to get a true picture of how much it costs to run an educational system. But as I toured around, I think the real reason is because they would like those funds to have more oversight.
Oversight usually means they want to know what's going on. It's just been a question of mine, because it
Yes.
seems like, again, micromanagement from above.
Well, and I don't want to use the word remorse, but I see a lot of hand-wringing at the state level. Like, there are a lot of unintended consequences that they did not foresee. And so there's a scramble to implement policy and perhaps petition for some changes. But it's, it takes a long time to make changes like that. So we're just trying to, be successful with the data that we have, the information that we have right now.
A couple of questions. Back to the theater fund, as I'll call it. Typically, what is that a year?
How much revenue is in
Yes.
there a year? It's hard to predict because in those internal accounts, we have revenue mixed with expenditures and it nets to a balance. And so they're not split out. So it's hard to really determine how much revenue is running through there versus how much expenditures are. And that's why what's in the special revenue fund, I just kind of eyeballed what was going through there to get a good number. So we'll know better once we get started in the 1920 school year, and we have at least a year's worth of data to determine what those budgetary amounts will be. But plus, to remember, you'll have a budget amendment in January, so by then we'll be halfway through the year. We'll kind of know where we're at with most of those.
But you've been doing this for what, as long as we've been having a musical, right?
Yeah, I have solid musical numbers for sure, because I know there's 983 seats in the theater, and, it usually sells out over a number of days, and so it's really easy to
Right.
predict what the revenue is for
So all
that.
I'm trying to draw a conclusion is out of that 244 that's supposed to be left, could I get a better approximation as to what?
So right now in that account, there's about $137,000, and we're at the end of our fiscal cycle, right? So about 137,000 of that 244 will belong to them.
Okay. And then back to Alicia's, her questions about the athletics and the revenue. So in the athletics account, it's all the teams that are out raising money for different things in their teams, correct, that are going in there?
Right.
What about the revenue from the football games, from the basketball games?
Those already hit our general fund.
Okay, does that include the advertising and all that kind of stuff that's put along the fence?
No, but it will now.
Okay, so where was that money prior?
That was going into the 6-2 accounts. So now that will be captured in the general fund.
So then, all athletic money will be in the general fund?
That's exactly right.
There's no other accounts, no
That is
nothing?
exactly, that we are aware of, that we control, or that we know of. It will all be in the general fund.
Can we ask John?
Sure.
What are you asking?
Is all that athletic money that's taken in, there's only one account, that's gonna be the general fund
Heading
account?
into 1920.
Is that correct? Are there more accounts now?
Not that we're aware of.
More internal accounts than are shown?
Yes.
Or
No, I think what he's asking is there other groups that
Are
may
there
have
external
athletic
accounts?
money that we don't know about.
If that's your question, there's one group, outside group, the Blue Line Club.
Okay, I'll ask the question again. All the athletic money that's taken in from sponsorships, games, teams, everything is now going into the general fund, is that correct?
Correct.
For 18 and 19, or
19.
19, 20?
Starts July 1.
Okay. Are there any other accounts now that are outstanding that aren't being accounted for in the general fund at all? Or that will be going into the general?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So you have no other accounts?
No.
Everything's paid out of the general fund?
In 1920.
Okay, so let's back a year up. How's it being handled now?
There's 6-2 accounts. That's what Gatsby.
Everything's a 6-2 account.
Well, no, we have some existing general fund athletic accounts, so let's take a look at the amended budget.
Okay?
So let's go back and pull those up. And I'll show you right where that is. Just gotta get my hands on it. So, on page 85, so this is your final amended budget. Under local revenue, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sixth line item under revenue, under local revenue on page 85. Okay, so everybody see that? So I say the amended amount is, I think that's a 6, 261,183. Unless that's not, it's a 5, okay, 251,183. Okay, so that money is all of our gate receipts, and we charge students to transport them to games. That was where pay to participate was receipted. And so that's the athletic revenue that the general fund is collecting to date. Now let me show you where we spend it. If you flip to page 89, the athletic expenditures are function 293. And I'm projecting that our final amended budget will spend $1,301,120. And that is all of your coaches, your refs, the supplies, some uniforms, entry fees to games,
Transportation's a big chunk of it.
transportation, and then like any student assistance that we need, if we need help with them setting up for games and things like that, like miscellaneous labor is taken out of there. So that's currently what's going on in the general fund.
It's all right, buddy, we'll get through this. These numbers are boring.
So awesome.
Okay, so that's roughly what, 1.1? When was that, 259? Okay.
So for 1920, if all of the sponsorship dollars and everything else that's being raised is coming in, should that increase the athletics revenues?
So not knowing what that number is, we do have a number in the projected budget for that amount. And again, as we live this out, we'll get a really good idea of what that number is going to be. So you'll notice in the projected budget, it's not much larger than the amended budget. And the reason for that
It's less
is
than.
it's a conservative estimate because we don't know if there's going to be a booster club perhaps that might pop up and capture all of that revenue as well as that expenditure.
Okay.
So I've budgeted for the expense in the general fund, but soft pedal the revenue.
So if we wanted to take the athletic money out of here, it would have to be into some kind of booster fund or
That's
something
right.
of that nature.
Yeah, and it'd have to be run by a non-employee.
And it would have to be a 501
C3.
a C7, I believe.
So some other districts might have, you might see a quarterback club or a bullpen club or a blue line club. Those are booster clubs that typically have their own 501c3 status outside of the school system. They have their own board, and they're non-employees that are running that organization. organization. That's where the 6-2 accounts could go. Otherwise, they go into the general fund and they're dispersed with that.
Do you see anything like that happening?
The only one that we have ever had in existence was the Blue Line Club, and historically, we didn't fund hockey and very expensive, and so that's always kind of been an offshoot. Yeah, as we travel down the road, we're gonna have to figure out a means to do that. I mean, there's basically 2 ways to do it. You either have an individual sport by sport booster club, which is what the coaches are kind of used to working with because they raise the money, they spend the money. I mean, obviously we have checks and balances in the district, or conversely, other places I've been, you have a, department-wide booster group.
But theoretically, based on 101, as we say, teams or whatever, there could be 101 booster clubs. You could.
Well, no, typically you would limit it by program, so football program.
I see, okay, which would encompass lacrosse, boys and girls.
30.
You have like 30, you have 32 different booster groups.
Yeah, okay.
So there's pros and cons to both ways, just like there were pros and cons to, having the individual 6-2 accounts, where those head coaches have to kind of manage it like a personal checking account. I mean, obviously we provide oversight too. But, under the capitalism theory, if you go out and you work hard and you earn money and you can spend the money and those type of things. If you're a program that doesn't need to do a ton of fundraising, golf doesn't raise as much money as competitive cheer or football or some of those other programs. Swim doesn't do a ton in the fundraising end of things.
So then if there's any new teams or organizations that are formed moving forward, is one of the requirements going to be that they have to have this 5-0?
I don't think you can require it, but
But
what you do is you
where
lay
do you
out.
account for the money?
Well, if it go to the special revenue fund or the general fund, if it's not in its own 501c3. That's the difference. There's really 2 options.
Right.
So there's a special revenue fund that Maria's already talked about, and then there's, if you're a 501c3 and you're a booster club operating solely outside of the school system.
Right.
What's the one? Harvard one. That's a good
Oh,
example.
I Will Right Now
I
Foundation.
Will Right Now would be a good example of an organization outside of the school system, their own 501c3, that generates money, we don't do anything with it, and they spend the money how they want. You theoretically could have booster.
But that's not necessarily a team affiliated.
I'm
with
just saying that
school or
that's what it would
club
look
that
like.
be
That's what it
affiliated.
would look like.
Yeah, okay, so that's a 501(c3).
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
I would say most of the clubs that are gonna end up in our general fund, it's hard to get a it's hard to manage one of those because you're passing it on to somebody else usually every year.
It's the rolling over of people.
Those are the ones that end up in our accounts.
That's my only point to this conversation, is the fact that if this is what's gonna happen moving down the road because of what the law of the state initiated, then I would suggest someone, start saying, hey, if you're going to have one of these clubs or if a new team or something to that effect, either it's gotta be this way or it's gotta be this way.
We've been talking about this for about 8 months now.
John, what's the interest, what has been the interest in the last several years for the athletic booster club?
0, to be honest with you.
Andy, I was gonna start one, and I found out how much we needed, and that's when the first bond started. Because I know that was when I was asking, how do I start one? And that's when I was introduced to Dr. Gray, and that's when I went, oh, we need more than that.
Yeah, I mean, Ken's history is accurate there. The only time we ever really had any momentum was when we were playing on the mud football field, and we, were looking at trying to put turf in there.
They saw it as a fundraising opportunity to replace that field.
Yeah. Outside of that, really, we get very few. The tough part about the current way we've done it for the last, forever is coaches. It's another job on the coach's plate. If you have a booster club, that takes a little bit off your plate, but it also, provides some different challenges as well. So some of which you guys have already touched on.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's federal law requirements to maintain your nonprofit status. You have to have a board. There's restrictions on how the money can be used. I mean, it's very cumbersome to do it. I mean, as a practical matter, that's why
It's hard.
nobody does it.
Well, some of these groups are generating over 50 grand, so then they gotta do it in a different form, tax-wise, and people that are volunteering don't really want to take on that responsibility. So that's the other challenge with this. Every district in the state's kind of dealing with this right now. This has been pushed out in the last 6 to 8 months. So we've been meeting with John and all the principals and all the people at PTOs just to kind of work our way through it. It'll be a learning curve this next year.
I would imagine the senior night party will almost always stay in there, because that's when I've been part of running it twice now. And you're doing it because your kid's there, and then next year you're done and it goes to somebody else and they've got to take it over.
Sustainability is tough.
Yeah, it's really tough.
It's tough. So we'll let you know how it goes as we go through next year and kind of wade our way through it. We'll have better recommendations after we've dealt with it for you.
For the data will help
I agree.
tell a quick story too, right? Roger, did you?
Well, I just wanted to, unless, is anyone else have any other specific questions? I just wanted to, I mean, we have the, you know, the board committee report section at the end of the agenda, but, I mean, I figured this is probably as good a time as any to just jump ahead and just make a few comments on behalf of the finance committee. It'll be a moot point once we get through the budget and then have the committee report regarding the proposed budget. I just want to say that I think that in talking about the 1920 proposed budget, I think Dr. Gray and Dr. Gistinger have done a phenomenal job of putting together a sound, fiscally conservative projected budget consistent with what they've done in the past few years. Just some of the more significant factors in the budget, of course, is we still don't know what the final per pupil allowance increase is going to be. They've taken a conservative approach in including a $150 per pupil increase. It will, based on all indications, it will be at least that, maybe more. Projected based on, from an enrollment number, a flat enrollment from the past year, and based on preliminary indications, that seems to be a fairly conservative approach as well. From the expense side, obviously this budget includes the proposed increases that we've previously agreed to with regard to BESPA and what's included in tonight's agenda for the proposed approval for BASA and BEA. There's obviously the inclusion of the new position for the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. So I think overall it really reflects, and at the end of the day, it's projecting another $1 million added to our fund balance, which gets us a little bit closer, to our goal. But we still got a ways to go. But it's good to see that we're checking off all the boxes that we as a district are recognized as important objectives to push the district forward and be on the cutting edge, but at the same time maintaining a fiscally conservative approach. So kudos to you too and the administration overall. I think this is a great projected budget, and we wholeheartedly support it.
So we also looked,
and we didn't have to borrow.
right, and we also looked at, you know how we always talk about the volume of our fund balance being the highest it's ever been. So now I looked at the percentage, and we are since 1994, we have the third highest fund balance percentage we've ever had.
That's great.
That's great.
And as long as we're talking about this and it's part of the budget, what are your thoughts? I mean, they brought out the MIPSers and how they're looking to make money out of that, how to help fund the roads. How might that affect for people in your opinion?
So that, I think, part of the reason why we don't have a budget at the state level, because part of the funding was related to a 45-cent per gallon increase, and so I think it's caught up in a lot of bureaucracy right now. I don't see that being a big implication in anything that we've decided here tonight.
Okay, thank you.
And I gotta do it because someone else isn't here. The energy bond is 1 year away.
That's right.
That is correct.
All right. We can't let that one die until it gets fixed.
Okay, we need to do it one more time.
Gift that keeps on giving. All right, any other discussion?
I just wanted to, that's all right. The capital expenditures for transportation this year, what does that include?
So I included that in your email. I'm not sure if you had a chance to read it. So 3 buses, about $205,000, and then we have a box truck, which is about $30,000, and a new maintenance van, which we budgeted about $20,000.
So what does that do as far as the aging of our bus fleet goes? What does this?
Really, the last three we were really worried about. The rest of them, I think we would have some time. I would still say we should probably continue to purchase. You know, we might be able to drop to two, maybe not. It depends on what we get budgetary wise. But according to Paula, our transportation director, this will really filter out the last of that cycle that was purchased long ago. That really give us a little bit, not safety-wise hesitation, but mechanically as sound as the rest of the buses.
So with the purchases in 1920, we'll have completely redone the entire fleets during the tenure.
It'd be pretty darn close, yeah, it might be all of them.
Well, really, we didn't buy any last year, did we?
We did, we bought three again.
Didn't we skip a year somewhere? I thought we skipped a year.
The ones fell off lease that we were leasing when we first got here, so we didn't have money to buy them.
We didn't have any
That
cash
fell away.
purchase, so we leased, but that fell off. We've purchased anywhere between 3 and 4, I would say, for the last, it's been a while, it's been 5, 6 years.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the item D and the amended budget 18-19 and the projected budget 19-20 signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Item F, certified staff resignation. Dr. Gray.
We recommend that you accept the resignation of Elizabeth Schmidt, grade 4 teacher at Hawkins Elementary. They are relocating to a new location.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Myers, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Item G, BHS administrator hire. Dr. Gray.
After an extensive search, we didn't have to look too far beyond the walls of Brighton High School to recommend Mr. Matt Evans to fill the vacancy of Mr. Vecchione. Matt has been not only a student here at Brighton Area Schools, but came back to teach here at the Bridge originally, where his wife continues to teach, and then at the high school for the last several years in our math department. Also coaches baseball for us and does just a myriad of things. So we're excited. We had a great pool of candidates, and we think Matt's going to be a star for our district now and long into the future. And the guy bleeds black and orange.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Stahl,
Support.
supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion?
I'd just like to say thanks to the committee that chose Matt. I think he's an excellent choice, and again, I know he bleeds black and orange, and his time he spent at the Bridge, and again, you know, just, I know they're big shoes to fill, but if anyone can fill them, I'm confident that Matt can do that, and I'm hoping that with him as a younger principal, let me say it that way, that this will continue for a period of time, similar to what Henry has done, and really get to know the system and be able to do things similar to what Henry has in his tenure here. So certainly appreciate it, and I'm glad that they picked Matt for that position.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. Item H, Scranton Middle School administrator hire.
Our excitement continues with the hiring. Our recommendation for us for you to hire Patrick Ward. Patrick's here tonight, I'm assuming with his family and his tired son. Again, great coverage in terms of our posting. This was a unanimous choice from our committee, which is rare in terms of interviewing and selecting candidates. Dr. Gistinger, myself, and Ms. Mosier spent quite a while in a conversation with Mr. Borg as well, and just like Mr. Evans, feel that he's going to be a great addition to the staff. He comes to us via Huron Valley Schools. He's I would say an experienced administrator who has relevant experience at the level that he's going to be, and I just see he and Ms. Hiller Dr. Hiller working very, very well together. So again, we're super excited to have Patrick join the team. He was at our administrative retreat last week and has got his feet wet, and I just see he and Matt and Patrick especially in this recommendation hitting the ground running. So we're excited for Scranton and excited for Dr. Hiller and that building. And again, it's very rare to get a unanimous recommendation out of an interview committee, and Patrick received that. So we'd recommend that you hire him.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Myers, supported by Ms. Krebs. Any discussion?
No more bull pups, right?
They're the J-pumps.
I'm sorry, J pups, that's right. No more J
We
pups.
talked about that.
I just want to say I'm excited again to see another alumni from UW Dearborn. Good luck finishing the program.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. Welcome aboard, Mr. Borg, and we're glad to have you as a Bulldog. Okay. Full pups.
J-pup.
J-pups.
Come on, get it right.
That's
That's out the door.
history.
It's gonna be in history pretty soon. You're gonna read about that in books.
He's on fire.
You're donating
Yeah.
the money for the new sign, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
That's a $50 million bond. Is that what it's worth? You sign.
59.
You can see where our priorities are clearly in middle school right now.
Are we gaining two students here too, is that?
All right.
We'll fix it up.
Well, you don't have
thank
to.
you
You don't
very
have to stay, so feel free anytime. Because I know the one guy's tired. Or bored.
All right, item I, certified staff retirement, Dr. Gray.
Shortly after the graduation ceremony on Monday, Ms. Park let us know that she will be retiring after 37 years of service to the district. She's done a ton for this district, just like lots of our retirees, but she's done a lot up and beyond the normal school day with leadership class and senior class advisor with Mr. Good and just a myriad of other things. So again, I wish her so much joy in her retirement. 37 years is a lot. She gave a lot of time to the district. She's helped shape a lot of kids and really, I think, hit her stride in that leadership class and some of the extra pieces when she would stay for hours and hours and hours on end. And we're going to miss her, and we have it posted, and we're looking for somebody new. But again, I wish her and Dave well in retirement, and hope they have a long and prosperous retirement. So we recommend that you accept the resignation. She did attend every single board meeting for 37 years.
No, she missed one.
She made almost everything.
Cut her a break.
We're gonna silence you.
She reads that in the film, she'll
Yeah,
be
exactly.
back, she'll be back to go for that one.
Yeah. I'm gonna do this with reservation, considering the, how close a relationship I've had with her since a very young child, but certainly she's been a tremendous employee for this district and is gonna be missed. Do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Mitchell, supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion?
Feels like somebody to make those cheese biscuits again.
And the cream pies.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, as everyone said,
Best of luck in many years too.
Yeah, she's done an amazing job for a long time, and it's gonna be big shoes to fill, and I wish her the best, for sure.
well, there's more besides just the teaching and the leadership class. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there's things we,
Homecoming.
Graduation.
graduation, so.
Yeah, it's been countless hours of things that probably we're not even thinking about or remembering.
Correct, yeah, I would agree.
Absolutely. Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Item J, administrative staff resignation, Dr. Gray.
We'd also recommend that you accept the resignation of Basha Keeler, 5 years as elementary principal at Hawkins. Bosch is taking your skill set and taking it to the next level as a curriculum director at Pinckney. She's had a passion for curriculum, and this came open and she couldn't pass it up. So we wish her the same luck that all of our employees that move on to different and better and bigger jobs, that we we do. So I've known Basha since the first day I got in the district. She was one of the first people I ever met with in a classroom at the high school about school improvement. And I wish her extreme success at Paint Me, and I think she'll do a great job there. So it's sad to see her go. It's bittersweet, just like Arnella and some of the others that we were talking about. But time marches on, so we wish her well, and we hope she has a great career at Paint Me.
Do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Support, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? Wish her the best. Yeah, absolutely. She's going to be another one we're going to miss. Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? Passes 7-0. Item K, renewal of superintendent contract. Dr. Gray.
I recommend you renew my contract.
Do we have a motion? So moved. Moved by Mr. Myers, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
The only thing I want to discuss is I brought up the topic, and perhaps I'd just like to see that put on the agenda soon.
Yeah, so let me address, so first of all, just for purposes of, I mean, certainly we as a board are very satisfied with the work that Dr. Gray and the entire administrative team and the leadership team here at Brighton have displayed over the years. So, you know, this is something we absolutely want to take care of from the extension standpoint. Saying that, we also recognize that the contract, some of the contract language needs to be updated based on the hiring of Ms. Irving, which we will work to make happen over the next 30 days or so. The executive committee will be convening and we'll discuss contract language changes, et cetera. And then we'll plan to bring that back in front of the board in July to present that portion of the contract. But for the purposes of this evening, we absolutely want to extend the contract from a term perspective, and we'll address the language, et cetera.
But again, this is the year.
This is the annual, yeah, correct. This gives a 1 year, yeah, this gives a 1 year extension to his current 5-year term. And we'll also plan to get Ms. Irvine involved in this process for a comp comparison and some of that type of stuff as we look at your current contract moving forward. Does that sound reasonable? All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? Passes 7-0. Item L, preliminary qualification application.
So we've been to Treasury. We had a good visit there, kind of old hat for us now. We spent about 40 minutes, went through the document, went through line by line. Only had a couple of, I would say, typographical things we had to change. The rest of it was all in line. All of our percentages pass Treasury easily. When I talk percentages, there's utilization rates that you have to follow in terms of how many kids are in particular buildings and those. So I would say the committee did a nice job putting this together. I'd give a lot of credit to Scott Heck from IDI, our architectural firm, and so it's ready for you to certify the preliminary qualification, and then in July we'll be bringing you something back where we start to do the actual ballot language. You have to approve that, and then we would certify for the election in November.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve? So moved. Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion?
I just want to say, this was a lot of work, I realize, and I appreciate all the effort that went into putting this together and meeting the timelines that we had established as a board in order to get this on the November ballot. So,
Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. Item M, BASA tentative agreement. Great.
We met with BASA's representatives not too long ago. You have the TA, you've had a couple of weeks to screen it. We'd recommend that you accept this particular tentative agreement with that particular group.
Do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify
guidelines, you have the tentative agreement, you also now have the completed contract in terms of the actually put together. A lot of thanks to their team, especially Jen Evans, who we sat together actually doing this, Maureen Strachan as well. A lot of editing, when you don't look at language for 5 years, you know, there's things that can change. We obviously went through those changes. Thank you to their team, Matt Dufon and Barry, who are here tonight, Margaret and Melissa Shirt, and Lori Hudson, the UNICEF director. But again, we were able to wade through it, and we look forward to moving forward with 3 years on language, and then have some financial calendar reopeners in the other years. So just like Boston and Vespa, thank you to that group, the BEA, and we recommend that you approve.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve? So moved by Mr. Myers, supported by Mr. Trump, Mr. Stahl, sorry. Any discussion? I also I want to thank all parties involved, certainly from the BEA side, and I won't name names because I'll miss somebody and I don't want to do that. These are never easy processes per se, and certainly there's a lot to discuss in a 5-year opener with language, etc. And then, you know, certainly Mr. Trombley, you put in a tremendous amount of work over the last number of years in this space. Dr. Gray, I know you've been heavily involved. Dr. Gistinger has been heavily involved, and so you know, I want to thank on behalf of the board all the parties involved in this. I think it worked out well for everyone, and we're pleased to be able to put this in place, and look forward to another solid 3 years. Can't do it without our teachers, and I think that's got to be said and understood that they're the most important piece of this entire district. So thank you. Well said. All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Passes 7-0. Okay, that gets us through for action tonight and brings us into for future action. Item A is the school loan bond fund resolution. Dr. Gray.
So you have in
Or
your
Dr. Gistinger.
board packet the resolution for the school bond loan fund. So what this is the assistance that the debt service fund needs to pay down the existing debt. I believe this is the last year or the second to last year that we are in a borrowing from the school bond loan fund mode. And then, actually, I think it is last year because we have some bonds that are falling out, about $13 million worth. And then that's when we get into repaying the school bond loan fund. And we don't have to change our millage rate. The 7.19 mills we levy for debt will carry us through to this repayment process.
Any questions?
And just to make sure that I remember this correctly from last year, the purpose of that borrowing is to smooth out payments from the beginning of the bond period through the end of the repayment period?
That is right.
So we've reached the tipping point in
That's
the
right.
amortization.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, item B, therapy dog donation. Dr. Gray.
Yeah, we'll recommend in a couple weeks you accept the donation of $1,000 from PepsiCo, the intergroup of Milford. We have a parent in the district that works for that particular company that met with Ms. Story and I, and talked a lot about the dog program. We're also looking at doing some quoting as well for some of our vending services through Pepsi and other areas. We've toured the district and we're kind of taking stock on that now. So we might have a recommendation on that. And that would be a sustainability program for revenue based on those particular
Remind me, I know we've had this conversation fairly frequently recently up here. This will go into the, I'll call it the pot for the dog program, but
Correct.
we now have dogs at every school, and so this will lead to support the replacement of
Correct.
a dog when they retire.
No, these would be some of those funds, wouldn't it, that we talked about previously?
Yeah, that you talked about earlier.
That's, and again, I think this would be an ideal thing that either it goes into a 501(c)(3) for some long-term stability, or it's treated as one of these same type of fund.
Well, just like Caesar retired, you know, the dogs are gonna retire at some time.
But we still need a place to park the money.
That's what I'm saying, we need to sustain everything.
Which we talked about at a board meeting not too long ago as well. I think that was,
Supposed to come back in August.
that was in August, okay. Good. Okay, any other discussion, questions? All right. Item C, cash flow borrowing resolution.
Yeah, so this, we didn't borrow this year, but we did have you approve the resolution. And so this was the first year since, as far back as we can look, that the district has never had to borrow money. We are barely over the threshold, so just as a security, yep, I would just like to have one more year to continue to build that cushion, just in case we have some unforeseen circumstances, because it's all fun and games until you can't make your payroll, right? So that's what this is for, just a little provisional shot out there to be able to have this cushion in the event we ever needed to tap into it. Again, I do not foresee that happening, so the district will be able to enjoy continued success in not paying interest on any borrowing and limited attorney's fees to execute this resolution.
I mean, if you do not present this next year, and then we need to get back to it, say, in 4 or 5 years down the road, is there a cost associated with that, or is it just a?
It's the same cost every single year. It's just an annual kind of thing, and the interest will come in depending on the interest rate that's being offered.
Right.
And what, so we actually were in the school bond, or the school loan fund, so we were borrowing money from the state of Michigan.
Right.
That rate was set by the state of Michigan. You had to take the money when the state said you had to take the money. You had to keep the money for as long as the state said you had to keep the money. And that worked really well, particularly when we didn't have a great bond rating. But now that, because who's gonna lend money to someone with a bad bond rating, right? So we were relying on the good graces of the state. Well, now we can stand on our own 2 feet. We have really good bond rating, and we can afford the luxury of going out into the market and talking to banks for this. And so we bid it out last year, and we awarded the bid to the bank with the lowest interest rate, just in case we ever had to use it. We didn't do that this year, only because all of that generates a ton of legal bills that the district may not have to incur, particularly since we may not ever use it. So we just went back to the low bidder last year and said, do you want to do this again? And they said, sure. And they said that the legal fees will not be more than $1,500 on their end of it. And they said they think it'll be $0. And then, of course, we have to pay Troon for preparing this resolution, but that actually might be the end of the legal fees associated with this. And perhaps we won't have to do this ever again.
So the only cost, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right.
So the only cost we're incurring then is legal fees on the bank end and on
That's right.
our attorney's end.
That's right.
For putting this in place.
Right, so there could be additional fees if we ever have to tap it, because then we'll have the
We'll
interest.
draw
on
the
it.
interest.
Right. But the nice thing about a revolving line of credit is that you can shorten the time that you need it. So for instance, we may have a low 30-day period, so we would only borrow for 30 days. Whereas when we were with the state, we had to take their interest rate and we had to borrow from August to August. So they charged us interest for 12 months even if we never really needed it.
No, you gotta just,
Okay, that was the same
what's the amount?
We put the same amount as we put in the resolution last year, 2.5 million. I mean, if we ever needed to touch this, it would probably be 700,000 or 800,000, and it would be a free thing, like 3 payrolls before a state aid note or state aid payment or something like that.
Most of the time, it's a calendar issue.
So we're building up enough cushion now where we can survive some of those downturns in the cash flow cycle, which is a good thing, which, you know, we knew we were gonna be here eventually.
I assume we're projecting the calendar a year out on that, for calendar another issue, or
We
2 years
do,
out?
we have to provide our attorney with our cash flow, which shows where our pay periods are, and also where the state aid comes in on the 20th of every month. So that goes through a vetting process with the attorney that prepared the resolution. So they're very careful to make sure that schools aren't borrowing more than they can pay back, for instance. So we go through a very thorough vetting process, which is also part of the attorney fees that we will incur with this. And that's when they give us the thumbs up that that's the amount that we can borrow. But, you know, our borrowing capacity, I mean, if I asked him for 15 million, he'd probably give it to me. I just have to demonstrate that we need it, and I can't do that because we don't need it.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? All right, that will close for future action and bring us to board committee reports, Board of Ed bulletins. Anybody have anything additional? I know, Mr. Myers hit the finance.
The only report I've got and would be our next meeting is July 2nd.
Facilities is July 2nd.
July 2nd.
6 o'clock.
Can you check to see if that's right close to the 4th, so
Right.
I just want to know before the 2nd if people are going to be here. Good, okay, so we'll keep it on the calendar.
Are you?
Tuesday.
I'll be here, yeah.
Okay, that's a Tuesday, right?
That's
Yes, it is.
Tuesday before the 4th.
Yeah. It's a good question.
Yeah, well, we've had in the past where I was sitting there by
No one
myself.
shows
Yeah,
up.
right. But you got it turned up.
Very productive meeting, yeah. Okay, so our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be Monday, July 22nd, 2019 at 7 p.m. And Ms. Myers.
At this time, I would like to make a motion to enter into closed session to continue discussing a matter containing information exempt under federal law and MCL 15.268H.
Move supported.
Do we have support?
Support.
Support from Ms. Reed. We need to do roll call.
Mrs. Reed,
Yes?
Mr. Stahl,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Trombley,
Yep.
Mr. Birchfield,
Yes.
Dr. Krebs.
Yes.
All right, let's take a 5-minute recess.